Ian Aber, welcome to the Hell Fucking Yeah podcast. Thank you so much for being here. So how's life going in these crazy times?
It's going good. I mean, I'm a performer by trade, so that aspect of my life is completely different this
Yeah,
year than any other year before, and it's really scary to think of how long it's going to take to get back to normal and what normal is going to look like. So as a stand-up comic, I'm already in an industry that's sort of like comedy clubs are sort of struggling already, and I've heard of several closing this year. So it's like, it's just a scary time, I think, for anybody who's who makes their living performing or being in the public, I think.
absolutely. It really is a scary time. Have you done any like virtual shows? Or are you planning on doing anything like that?
Yeah, I have. I'm actually doing one on, I haven't produced any. I before all this happened, I would produce local shows in Atlanta where I'm based out of. So I'm doing one on the 22nd of December. It's called a holiday comedy kiki, and it'll be like comics from all over. I'm giving like 20% of the funding to a community food bank in Atlanta that helps feed underfed people. But yeah. And I've done a lot of the online shows, and in Atlanta for a minute, they softened the restrictions, and we were doing a lot of outside shows for a minute. And it's not been bad, but it's like, it's not the same. It's just not, I haven't done one show where I was like, yeah, that's just like, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's got to be difficult, especially as a comedian, to do comedy without laughter sometimes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, I've likened it to, I used to smoke. I'm not a smoker anymore, but like, it's like, I'll get a cigarette, but it's a menthol or a Capri, or it was underneath, it's been stale. Oh, no one smoked this pack in 10 years. Well, here, you can have that. You know what I mean? So it's like, you still get to smoke, but it's like, it's not your brand. It's not a fresh pack. You know what I mean? It's just not this,
It's right. It's not the same.
Yeah.
So you live in Atlanta right now. Have you lived there your whole life?
I have been in Atlanta for like 31 years. So most of my life,
Yeah.
I would say. It's completely different than it was when I first moved here. Like it's just not, it's like such a bigger city. I'm gay. There's a huge gay population. And it's a great city in general. And there's a great, huge, like, black population. I mean, it is sort of like, culturally, it's a black city, I would say, you know what I mean? In terms of like hip hop defines the city in a way.
Absolutely. So for those who may not know, Ian is a hilarious comedian, writer and producer, a host and co-producer of several comedy shows, and host of his very own podcast, Straight People, a minor look at the majority, which we'll get into in a bit.
Okay.
So how long have you been doing comedy?
I'm a little late to the game. I started when I was 38. So I'm 47 now. So this is my 9th year, even though I won't count this year. But yeah, I was one of those people that was always like, being funny never worked in my advantage. Being funny got me in trouble in school, and my parents used to tell. I remember my mom pulling me aside when I was 8, and she was like, "You're not cute anymore," So I came to comedy really late because I didn't think it was something that was productive in terms of like my personality. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But yeah, the first time I got on stage, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is what I should have been doing the whole time."
Yeah. You know what? And you're a natural at it. Absolutely. So as far as the art of comedy goes, was stand-up always the end goal, or did you dabble in like sketch comedy, improv, things like that?
I did take an improv class, like maybe about a year or two before I started stand-up. And it was mostly because it was at a theater that was right around my house that I would go to watch improv, called Dad's Garage. It's a great theater in Atlanta. They do a lot of online stuff right now. But I didn't like it because there were other people on stage, and I just didn't have any trust of other performers. And that's something that I have now. I understand now that what I didn't like about stand-up was I didn't trust the other people to be funny, or you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't. Yeah. It wasn't my vibe at all.
I got you. So who are your influences?
Oh, geez. Okay. I'm like a stand-up nerd. Like, I'm one of those people that stand-up's always been an art form that as a consumer that I've always, so like I would go back. I mean, I could go back as far as like Jonathan Winters, Carol Burnett, Richard Pryor, of course, Eddie Murphy, Paula Poundstone, Margaret Cho. More modern people are like James Adomian and Eddie Pepitone, and I love Jackie Cation, and Margaret Cho's still at it. I've actually gotten to work with her a couple times, which has been amazing. I'm trying to think who else. Fortune Famester is great. Mateo Lane, Joel Kim Booster, a lot of queer comics. Guy Branum is like, seeing him live was like changed how I do comedy. But yeah. So I'm a super fan of the genre. So like, even my husband and I, when we would go on dates, like through the years that we've been together, like comedy was one of the like main things that we would go to see together.
Sure.
Yeah.
I actually got to see Margaret Cho a few times live. She's amazing.
Yeah, I just saw her, well, not recently, but like a year or two ago, at Limestone Comedy Festival. She was one of the headliners, and she was doing the material that was like in her first HBO special, but she had rewritten it, like, so it was like modern versions of those jokes.
Wow.
And it was amazing because, like, as a super fan, I'm like, oh my god, because she doesn't tell those jokes anymore. She'll never get on stage and be like, you know, but she literally was doing that. She had taken them and made them more modern. And it was one of the best, like, it was one of the best performances of hers that I've seen in a long time.
Wow. You know, you just brought up a good point that I want to ask. When you tell a joke over and over, so do you ever get sick of telling the same joke?
Yes,
basically?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Even if it kills, you know.
Well, if it kills, then no, I never get.
Okay.
Because the jokes aren't for me. The jokes are for me as I write them. Like the joy of writing a joke or coming up with something funny that maybe hasn't been done on stage before, or you have a fresh take on an existing premise. It's exciting. But ultimately the jokes are for the audience. So like comics, especially like who are newer at it than me, that's one of the biggest things is like, some comics get really good because they keep writing jokes. They keep pushing to find their voice. So like, they're not in love with any joke. They'll just, you know, they'll like, every time you see them, they essentially have a new set. And that can be reductive because like, you never take those jokes that are good and really work with them. And I guess to answer your question is, I never know when a joke's done. It's not like a song. Like, you know how like, I will always ask musicians, how do you know when the song is done? Because with a joke, I ad-lib a little bit on stage each time I get on stage. So sometimes a joke that I told, a joke that I've been telling for 6 years, the version I told 6 years ago and the version I tell today, the punchlines may be the same, but everything else can be different about them.
Gotcha.
Or I take jokes, like a couple jokes, and I put them together into a new joke. Like I call that chunking. We call that, I think other writers call it too. So you take things that are similar and you chunk them together, and all of a sudden it's like you have these 3 jokes that are just okay, but they make this one amazing joke, you know? It's like
Right. No, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So you were a national finalist in NBC's Stand Up for Diversity.
I was the gay one. Yes, I was the gay one.
So you want to tell us about that experience a little bit?
Yeah, it was actually sort of like, it was this time like 5 years ago. And I was about 3 or 4 years into comedy. And the way that process works is, at that time anyways, you would go and show up at whatever time in the morning to wait in line to do an open call that started at 9 a.m. And you did 1 minute of material. And if they liked you, they would pass you through to the next round where you got to do 2 minutes of material. And then if they liked you, then you went to the semifinals, which was the next night at the comedy club in front of an audience. Then you would do 5 to 7 minutes or whatever.
Wow.
And at the time, I really wasn't like one of the comics in Atlanta that got booked a lot. I was just sort of figuring it out. I was getting some work at the local club, Laughing Skull Lounge. And I went to the open call audition, and traditionally that program at that time in 2015 was seen by most of the comics in Atlanta as when they said diversity, they meant Black. And but I went through and looked at the listing of all the people who'd made it through, and I saw this pattern of that they would have one gay comic every year basically. And so I was like, well, let me go try. And I had never auditioned for anything, so I just was like, okay. And I went and did the open call, and I did really well. And that I spent a lot of time leading up to it paring down my 5-minute set to 1 minute. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go in in a 1 minute audition, I'm going to try to make them laugh 4 times in 1 minute. And I did. And they laughed every time I wanted them to laugh. And then the 2 minute was the same thing. I'm going to make them laugh 6 times. And then when I got to do the regular set, I just did a regular set. But yeah, it was really fun because it was like when I went to the second round, a lot of the people who were in the second round were actually people that the clubs or whoever, like industry people in Atlanta, had recommended. So those are all the people who got all the work, the people that like the level I wanted to be at. So when I walked in the room, I got passed through, and they had all gotten basically the spots by, you know, being funny already. So the look on some people's faces when I walked in, I was like, and then I made it through to the finals, and it was a good experience for me, but it was like, it almost happened too early in a way, because when I went to LA, I had no idea. Like, that whole program is, you get a holding deal with NBC, and then they put you on their college tour. So NBC does a college tour every year with like these new comics. So the colleges, getting colleges was great, but I didn't know when they said a holding deal, I was like, you know, I thought you would get stand-up work out of a stand-up contest.
Right.
But what they were looking for were show writers and actors and somebody that they could take and develop and turn into the next, like Eric Andre or Ron Funches. Those are the kind of people who've won that in the past or been finalists in the past.
Oh, wow.
So it was a great experience, but it was like, I wish that was happening now, because now I have a couple sitcom pilots I've written. I have a couple show ideas. I produce more comedy in general. I have an album out. I have more to show for myself.
Sure.
And that was the big thing. But it was a great shot in the arm in terms of like confidence.
Sure.
And getting to do colleges was a great experience. It taught me a lot about, I had to get an hour together to do colleges. I didn't believe I had an hour at the time. And yeah, it was anybody who's any type of minority, in my opinion, should try to, if they're a stand-up comic, should try and do that audition, just to get the feedback and to see what it's like to do the audition process.
Absolutely. Is NBC still doing this?
Yeah, they didn't do it this year. And I actually auditioned like, yeah. I did two more years of it, and I made the semifinals each time. So I'd make it to that Sunday night. And they basically like, you know, we've seen you. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah. I probably won't do it. I may do it again next year just because there's like, we didn't get to do anything this year. But it's a great process because it's like the people who are the judges are like, one of them is the booker of the Tonight Show. Of course you want to make the booker of the Tonight Show laugh. I mean, come on.
Yeah. You know? So can you tell me about Sweet Baby Cheeses and grilled cheese and comedy?
Okay. Sweet Baby there was this great independent theater in Atlanta called Relapse Theater, owned by this guy Bob Wood, who I love and adore, and he would never listen to this because he doesn't listen to any podcasts I know. But he's like not online. He's one of those people who's just not in any capacity online. But he had this theater where he would, I mean, like his door deal was, so it was like he would work with anybody. So if you were like, so I went to him one day and I was like, hey, I want to do a show where my husband and mother-in-law are on the side of the stage the whole time making grilled cheese sandwiches and handing them out to the audiences. He's like, oh yeah, let's do it. And what I would do is I would put up so we would pull a really big crowd, and they were really happy, like a good audience for comedy because we had fed them and they had gotten drinks and whatever. Sure. So I would put up the newer comics in Atlanta. So comics that I knew had not been in front of an audience that big, and give them like 5 minutes and record them and give them their sets, because getting good sets is a really hard thing to do. And so like the whole thing was, my husband knows all the comics in Atlanta. He knows all their sets. So I would challenge myself to book people he had never seen or people that I knew had new material. And it was just like this little, I mean, I hate that it's over because the theater closed. But I don't know if I could even bring that back. Like, when would people trust?
Yeah.
Trust you enough to make them a sandwich. But the whole thing was, it was about grilled cheese, but really it was about getting the audience to that state of, we've satisfied all your other needs. You're in a seat, the room's comfortable, you've eaten, you've drank, now let us entertain you. And I love that. That was one of my favorite things about it. You know, it's like people would come to those shows and then based on that show come to other shows that I produced or go see live comedy in Atlanta in general, being convinced that it was a great thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Cheese is the equivalent of cocaine for me. It is, I would snort it if I could.
Yeah. We tried doing it.
I would trust you to make me a sandwich and watch.
Well, let me tell you, we had tried originally with pancakes. The show was originally called Flap Jokes, right? And it didn't work because if you eat a pancake, it makes you tired. You know, like grilled cheese don't make you tired. They make you, they're salty, so they make you want to drink more.
Right.
Flap Jokes, it was like we did 2 of those, and like by the time we put the closer on, the audience was like gone. They were ready to go to bed.
That's insane. Yeah, I pancakes. I get bored of pancakes really quick. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like
And yeah, I do get
pancakes at
tired.
night. Pancakes at night are fun, but it's like you can't after 20 or 30 minutes of eating pancakes, they start to expand in your stomach, or I don't know what they're doing,
Right.
but they make you like you get the itis real bad.
Yeah.
You know.
Not a great breakfast food now that I think about it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a more of a waffle kid myself.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. So you were a part of the Atlanta Condom Couture benefit show. I was there for a minute, like on the screen. I did some graphic work for Jessica.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the live stream, and there you were. I was instantly like, I need to get this guy on the show. And that's the coolest part about doing this, honestly. I'm pretty new at this, but I get to discover all this new shit, you know? It's really cool. So how did you get involved with Condom Couture?
A friend of mine, Annie, who was also on the show, she was one of the other comics on the show. She'd asked me if I wanted to be involved. She does a lot of work with Planned Parenthood, and I told her, hey, if you ever need anybody for a Planned Parenthood thing, I'd be more than happy to do it.
Yeah.
And I knew a couple of the other performers, like Royalty, and there were a couple other people that I knew. And that was really interesting because it was stand up. They recorded it in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So it was me in this like backyard that you had to like, you know, mind all the dog poo-poos, and you know what I mean, before you came in, like, watch out.
Yeah.
And I was being filmed like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon outside, which is like the opposite of what great comedy is. Comedy is like good at night in dark spaces, you know what I mean? And then everyone who was around me were all preparing their own stuff. So it was like, you know, women gluing condoms to each other to make their outfits and whatnot.
Oh, wow.
So nobody was really paying attention to me. And I just decided I was going to, like, I do this thing where I imagine the audience. So, like, you know how they say, imagine the audience with their clothes off or whatever. Mm-hmm. I just will literally be like, okay, this is the night that I performed at this theater at this time, and there was 1,000 people there. I'm going to pretend like that's who I'm performing to. And that's what I did. I was like, I'm performing to the Diana Wortham Theater at Laugh Your Asheville Festival Off in 2019. There were like 800 people in the room. And I did that, and they reacted to me. So all those people were not necessarily ignoring me, but they all had their own shit going on because they were all getting filmed next. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then they all stopped what they were doing and watched my set. Was kind of amazing. You know what I mean? Like,
that is really cool.
Yeah.
And
I watched that set a few times. I usually don't like them, but I watched that one because I was like, I saw what I do in bad situations. And I just sort of power through, and I really was like, oh wow, I guess I am good at this.
Yeah, no, it takes skill to, especially you know, picturing that scenario in my head. That's crazy.
Yeah.
To you know, sometimes it's even hard to do this or just talk to one person
for sure.
I do this radio show too, on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, and I just play some music that I like and I talk a little bit, and even that sometimes I'm like, who the fuck am I talking to?
Yeah,
I'm in a garage, you know, talking to myself.
Right.
So I do understand what you're saying, but yeah, it takes a lot of skill to be able to do that in that situation. So, and you killed it. That was a great set.
Thank you. I was surprised that anybody was like, and then when they aired it, I didn't know what day. I forgot what day it was.
Yeah.
And I kept getting stuff on my social media. Mm-hmm. So I kept seeing people. I kept getting followed. Like all of a sudden, I was like, what's going on? I was like, because you know, I mean, I'm watching that all day. But then, yes, people started commenting, and then you contacted me. I was like, oh shit! So I went and watched the rest of the program because I found out about halfway through it was on. And then when I went and rewatched my set, I really was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I watched it live because, you know, I was on it. So it was like special to me. You know, it was like my 15 seconds of fame or something. And
nice.
and I really enjoyed it. And it was great. But, you know, certain things stuck out to me. And obviously you were one of them. I thought you were great.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Hey, I have a question for you. Sure. On your wall.
Yes.
You have that little black and white Elvis. Is that right? Is that
yes.
A little black? Who's the person underneath Elvis?
The guy in the blue shirt.
Yeah, blue shirt.
He's an actor. His name is Joseph Poliquin.
Okay.
He was on my show. One of my first episodes, actually.
Okay, I was just wondering if he was a musician. I was like, who is
that?
Okay,
cool. I put actually, you're down here. I put everybody up on the wall.
Oh, nice. Okay, nice.
And eventually it'll be all filled up.
Can you swap me and him? I'm joking.
Yeah. Yes. I definitely can. We'll bring you up front more. Honestly, I just put that there now because I was like running late and I was having problems with my computer. So
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it works now. Everything's great. But
Great.
every time I have to do something, there's a
Yeah.
problem. Every time. It works all the time for doing nothing, doing bullshit. Then when I have to really do something, something happens.
So I was recording my podcast. Like, I would have people come to my house, obviously before COVID, and I had got my little setup, and it took me a long time to figure it out. I was the same thing. Like, every time I went to record, there'd be some problem. And when I finally was like, I have it down, that's when COVID came out. And then they're like, oh, well, now you got to do it online. I was like, so I had to relearn you know what I mean? Like the same.
Right.
Terrible.
I'm
trying to use something other than Zoom too. And it's like, when it works, it's amazing. And when it doesn't work, it's the biggest pain in the ass. It's just
right. I started this during the shutdown, and so I only know it this way. As a matter of fact, one of my friends, he's a comedian as well. He wanted to do the show in person. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to do that. Like, I have my setup, and that's what I do. I'm willing to learn, but this takes me a half an hour to an hour. As what you're saying is going to sounds like fucking all night.
Right.
You know, setting up microphones.
See, I'm like sitting right here with this other microphone and getting set up. This is my local setup. I haven't used it since March, but yeah. But I record my podcast at the same table, and if I'm on somebody else's, I come sit here too. It's funny.
Right. I wonder, one day I might do it that way, but for now it's where, especially with are you guys, by the way, shut down yet, or are you being shut down? Do you know what's happening?
I wish I was up on it. I haven't watched the news in like 3 days. I watch the news like Friday and Saturday, and then the rest of the week I kind of take off. But I think where we are is, so I work with Laughing Skull Lounge. I book their local talent, and they were doing shows at a space called Center Stage in Atlanta, which is it's like a 1,100 seat indoor theater, and they were selling 200 tickets and socially distancing everybody, and they stopped doing it. So they were doing that in October and November when it looked like things were going down. At the minute it looked like things were spiking back up, the owner was like, we're pulling these, we're not going to do them anymore. Yeah. So there's still indoor comedy going on, which baffles me, because I wouldn't people have been asking me to do stuff and I've been turning it down. Yeah. And I have a couple outdoor shows left to do by the end of the year, but we'll be outside freezing. So it's like, comedy's not fun when you're like fully in a full sweat or freezing to death. There's just it's not the same. But yeah, so we're not in like Atlanta. I don't think Atlanta ever really went into full shutdown. I think there was maybe a moment in April where everybody was staying home. But right now what I see is that people are, at least like when I go to the grocery store and stuff, everyone's wearing masks. And that took months of months. Because I would go to the store and I'd see I'd walk in, and if I saw 5 people with no mask on, I would leave and come back to the grocery store the next day.
Wow. So here it's mandatory.
They're not. It's not like that here.
Okay. No. If you go to a grocery store, the security guards, and if you don't have a mask on, they tell you to leave.
See, this is the South. So instead of a security guard, it's like an old white woman giving you a dirty look. But actually, in actuality, it's the old white woman who's not wearing the mask. My husband had to have a conversation with his mom. She was bitching about, so she has a mask. She only has one mask, and it's real loose, and her nose is always out. And somebody said something to her at the grocery store and was like, when you're wearing your mask, and she was like, why don't you fuck off? And back. And then she called my husband, and he was like, took the other woman's side because she's being ridiculous. I won't go out in public with her what she wears when she won't, because her mask is on her chin, and she thinks that's enough. And it's like, no.
Yeah, you got to cover the nose, and otherwise it's pretty much pointless.
What's the point? Exactly.
Right.
I mean, she sees it though as like something that's being done to her specifically. You know what I mean? She doesn't realize that we're all, I was telling her the other day, the person at the grocery store who's working the register has to wear their mask for 8 hours. You're in there for 10 minutes, and you're acting like a child about it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I can't. I don't enjoy wearing it, but I do what I got to do. Just.
I'm a little surprised at how it's like. I don't mind it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe I'm a sheeple. You know what I mean? But it's like no. It's not that big. It's not that big of a deal. The thing I hate the most is when the masks start to smell. Because sometimes I'm out and I'm like, do I stink? And I'm like, no, it's the fucking mask. God dang.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I smoke, so I'm breathing in nasty smoker breath all the time. But
that's funny.
Well,
I vape, and it's about the same thing. So I vape this weed pen.
Yeah. Well, at least Oh, it's weed. I was gonna say at least you get like strawberries or something.
They say they all taste like something, but they just taste like high. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, let's talk about your podcast, Straight People.
Okay.
I listened to some episodes this morning. I love this podcast. This is great. I like I really do. It's so much fun, and it's charming, and it's educational.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
I was going for charming and educational. That's sort of my
there you go.
wheelhouse. You know what I'm saying?
There you go. You nailed it. You nailed it.
Thank you.
So when did you start this podcast?
Gosh, it's a harrowing tale, really. I started it in 2018, and I had a producer who had a podcast network, and I would go to him and record my podcast and whatever. And we recorded like almost 50 episodes. And then one day he was like, I'm not producing podcasts anymore. And that was it. And I tried for a couple months to get, because he had all the copies of all my episodes. And then one day he was like, you know, he gave me whatever episodes he had. And he was like, I lost the rest of them. So he lost like 40 episodes or something. So that put me in like because I had such a hard time coming up with an idea for a podcast. And then like, I really hate to ask people to do stuff. So every time I would ask somebody, it was like just, oh, you know what I mean? Like the anxiety. Yeah. And then I had anxiety. I have a huge anxiety about wasting people's time. And then so when someone would come to record, if we started late or what, you know what I mean? Like if there was any hiccups, I'd be, oh. So like about 6 or 7 months went by, and finally I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to, I'm smart enough to know how to record a podcast. Yeah. If the guy who lost 40 episodes of my podcast in an age when you can get a terabyte of cloud memory for like $5 a month, then I can learn how to, you know what I mean? So I did. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos of straight people explaining how audio visual equipment works, whatever. And I bought my shit. I got my rig together, right? And I started recording again. And then COVID happened. So I recorded maybe another 25 episodes, and I was putting it on a season, so not weekly.
Right.
And I did a bunch at the end of 2019 through the beginning of 2020. And literally, I feel like the day we went into quarantine was when I released the season. And then I went into sort of COVID depression, I guess. I don't know. And then I didn't record anything for 8 months because it took me that long to go. Like, it was like I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's like, I'm very defeatist in the sense that like when something's hard, I'll buckle down, but when something gets really hard, I'll give up on it almost forever. And so I feel like I gave up on this podcast twice, and now I'm back recording it digitally. And so now I have the option. I can record it remotely like this, or I can record it in person. I'm back and I'm doing it weekly. And I finally came up with a format that I feel like is like, we're not going too in depth with anything. And it ends on a high note. And there's sort of like like you said, kind of an educational, but it's playful. It's not like I'm not trying to change anybody's mind about anything.
Right.
But if you live in the space of the intent of the podcast for the 20 minutes you listen to it, you will wonder like, what is straight? Because like we really closely define what queer is and what gay is and what lesbian is, and what trans is. But then is everything else straight? You know what I mean? Right. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that, I think when you start thinking about it like that, it's like, oh, you know, and what we called straight when I was 5 years old and what we call straight now are two entirely different things.
Absolutely.
So what's the future? What's 20 years from now look like, you know?
Right. I really love the straight or gay segment too. That's so much. That's so fun. It really is.
Thank you.
And, you know, I try to keep my show lengths down. Like, so most of the time it's about an hour, but even sometimes I file like that's too long, you know? Like a Joe Rogan show is like 5 hours.
That's insane.
Who has time for that?
My brother listens to them all the time. But I was trying to book somebody the other day, and they said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to do it. The 20 minutes is a good sell because like a lot of times these people are out here trying to force an hour conversation." And I was like, I knew what he meant, but I was like, this motherfucker doesn't want to talk to me for an hour. So I got about 20 minutes. But yeah, I did that. My podcast is now part of the Helium podcast network, which is the Helium clubs getting their own podcast network off the ground. Yeah. And they asked for content like between 20 and 30. And I was already sort of doing 30, 45. Right. But what I've really tried to do is say, okay, it's going to be a 20-minute. We're going to get through the stuff. Yeah. Sometimes they're a little longer because it gets a little interesting. But for the most part, I feel like that makes it so much easier for a guest because they're
Absolutely.
not worried about how, like, you and I don't know each other. I had a lot of anxiety about doing this because I'm like, oh, what if I run out of shit to talk?
Listen, I am the most anxious person you'll ever meet. You know, like I totally relate, and that's
Yeah.
kind of why I do this. This is like my 28th episode about.
Nice.
And if you watch my first one, you would be like, this guy can't do this. He needs to go do something else. It's not for him. But instead of giving up on like everything else, I just keep going at it until I get better and better. And sometimes
I find that like that's what I like to hear. You know what I mean? Because that helps
thank
me convince myself later when I go, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah. I find that if I stick to something and I just keep working at it, you know, eventually it gets better. I'm still gonna suck here and there, but that's okay.
Course.
That's okay, you know. So besides that, though, I find it has an important message too. Really, what would you say is the main goal of the show?
I don't know if I wish I had a goal. I need one. Thank you for pointing that out.
I think it does have a goal. I really do.
I do. You know what I guess the main goal of it right now through the end of this year is that it's forcing me to talk to people because I have a husband and a group of like core friends that I talk to on a regular basis. But that number is really small, and I don't. Comedy was something that forced me out of my shell. I went out every night of the week, and you know what I mean. It's like you're forced to be around people more, and so right now the goal of that is just to stay connected to people and to have conversations that benefit others. Because like I get a lot of emails from people who don't live in the United States, where in countries that sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to be gay, and sometimes like downright illegal to be gay.
Yeah.
And what they like about the podcast is that it's like queer doesn't feel like this crazy thing that's so different than straight, you know. And that's my big thing is like, you know, we're all the same, and I think pointing out the edges of where we butt up against each other is funny, and it maybe softens. Like I know a lot of queer people who have resentment against straight people, and I know a lot of straight people who don't know enough gay people to understand how to treat them. You know, so it's like, you know, it's on both sides, really.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, that alone is a great message. You know, it's
cool.
It's really important to be able to bridge those gaps. And
well, and I love like a one-on-one interview, like like. You know what I mean? Like just that's sort of my favorite style. I don't like podcasts where there's multiple people on them all talking to each other. It drives me crazy.
Right. Yeah. No, me neither. Every now and then I'll have like two people on, but they usually know each other. So they work off each other anyway. So that works out. But yeah, I prefer it this way as well. And yeah, this has broken me out of my shell a bit since I started doing this. My wife says to me all the time, like, you got to stop saying, I'm like, that's just the way I fucking talk.
Yeah.
You know,
I know people who edit all the ums out of their podcast. Can you imagine? Could you imagine?
No way. It would be like 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
So you had a comedy album came out this year. It was called Night Sugar.
Yep.
This is so fucking good. I listened to this last night. If you guys haven't heard it, head over to your preferred streaming service and hit download. When and where was this recorded?
It was recorded April 1st, 2019, at a place called Star Bar on a Monday night. Star Bar is this bar in this kind of alternative kind of neighborhood, I guess. Little 5 Points in Atlanta, like kind of where all the cool kids are. And it is this Monday night show that every Monday 100 to 200 people show up to watch. And it's a place that I got to be a regular on, so be on every week for like 6 months or something over the years. And I really cut my teeth at that bar, just like I did at Laughing Skull. And it's just a great environment. And what I wanted to capture in my album was not only my humor and jokes or whatever, but what it's like at Star Bar on a Monday night. And I really feel like I did. So like there were probably about 175 people in the room. So I could have done it somewhere else in front of a bigger audience, but I wanted that audience because that audience has been there for me so much over the years, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So is it a different feeling knowing that the set's being recorded? Like, is it a different kind of pressure?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I even so the album so the album is called Night Sugar,
Mhm.
and I shouldn't even tell this, but I'm going to. I didn't tell that joke that night. I did the whole album. I recorded the whole fucking album, did an hour, and forgot to tell the joke that I was naming the album after. So that Night Sugar, that joke, there's two jokes that I re-recorded like 2 weeks later in front of the same, like on another Monday night. So I
Right.
did like a 10-minute set and put those two jokes in the middle. And my same sound producer came and captured the sound for both, and we edited it so it looks like I did it all in one night. But yeah, so like the pressure is, and that's such a me thing to do, is to tell everyone, oh, I'm gonna name my album Night Sugar, which is a joke that a lot of people I've over the years have said that's my favorite joke of yours. And I barely ever tell it. I always forget to tell it. It's always on my list and I never tell it.
Right.
And then so I was like, oh, I'm gonna name the album that, and I don't know why, but I forgot to tell. And at the very end, the first thing my husband said was, "You didn't tell Night Sugar," and I was like, "God damn!" So I was all basking in that I just finished, and then the minute, so I got maybe 10 seconds of like the satisfaction of completing it before somebody was like, "You forgot to." That's such my life. That's my life all day. Is that I did it, I accomplished it. I got 10 seconds of joy, and then it was back to
Yeah, great album.
Thank you.
Anything? Well, I guess you really can't be recording anything anytime soon, but
I am working on I already I'm like the come up with the title first kind of guy. My next album I'm going to try to record next year, and I've written a bunch of material during quarantine, and not all of it's about quarantine, so I feel like it's going to carry over.
Yeah.
So when we're able to tour again next year, I'm going to go through the Southeast to go do all the independent shows I can, and I'm going to get my album together, and I don't know where I'm going to record it because I don't know if Starboard will be back or not. But it's going to be called America's Gay Christian Sweetheart. That's a title I gave myself recently. But yeah, so I don't know when that will be, but I already know I'm going to record another one. Yeah, I got some really good advice about recording albums. Just that if you're somebody who produces a lot of content that you're proud of, recording the album is sort of like a yearbook.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So there's some of the jokes on Night Sugar that I still tell in when I do long hours or whatever. But they're completely different than the version that was recorded. Like you were talking about earlier, do you keep working on it? And so there's a couple jokes that I still do that the evolution of that joke, it's like, you may have heard it on Night Sugar, but you'll still be completely surprised by it now because I've changed it up and it's a different joke pretty much,
Right. That's really cool. So, and what's one piece of advice you would give somebody who wants to get into stand-up comedy?
Don't do it. We're full up. No, my advice is that if you're somebody who's always being told you're funny, then try stand-up comedy. If you're somebody who you think you're funny and nobody else has any time for it, then you might be funny or you just might be irritating. You know what I mean? And I think that's it's hard to not give advice to people, but then I've been very conscious of, because I'm older and most of the people doing stand-up are in their 20s and I'm in my 40s. They don't want my advice. Do you know? It's the way that I didn't want advice when I was in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times what I do is I just don't, you know what I mean? I just don't give advice because I don't want to harm or hinder in any capacity somebody who, I may not think you're funny when you first start, but 2 years from now, I might look at you again and go, oh, wow. You know what I mean? And that's definitely happened. And I've learned that, yeah. So my biggest piece of advice, though, is if you are constantly being told you're funny, you're a stand-up comedian. That's how the world works.
Right.
If you're somebody who is always trying to make jokes and nobody's laughing, you know what I mean? You're the reverse of a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, definitely. Could you, just side note, could you imagine someone recording an album now in quarantine, in a room, nobody there?
Yeah.
Just no laughter. It'd be so weird.
No, not that exactly, but there's Sam Morril, who's if you should check him out. He's super funny. But he did a rooftop of special where he's on he's a roof and it's just a small audience, but they mic them up really good.
Right.
And who else? Somebody, Giancarlo Cerisi. There's been a couple of people who put out content during, and it's surprisingly good. Now, what I wonder is if in 5 years you go back and listen to it, you're like, oh, I can't, because
Right.
you know you're so sick of hearing about. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like once this is in the rear view for us, like
Yeah.
as like as a group, as a culture, I don't think we're ever want to look back. Like I don't know
No.
when we're going to look back nostalgically on any.
No, I don't
Like
want to see.
Donald
I
Trump
don't.
as president. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
You know, like, no.
I don't want to see COVID the movie. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Definitely
like
wanna
in
forget
20
about
years, though, like all the COVID babies, like when the COVID babies become the culture, then COVID, you know what I mean? It's going to come back.
Yeah.
Like as masks are going to come back. Like
Right.
they're going to be people who are going to be ironically wearing masks like in 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And they're going to be like at Urban Outfitters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trust me. I believe it with all my heart.
Absolutely.
After seeing all the 90s stuff come back and like listening to, I mean, I've had conversations with like 21, 22-year-olds who are talking about like, oh man, I remember when I had Dunkaroos when I was a kid. I'm like, they discontinued that like 5 years before you were born, buddy,
Right.
or whatever.
Right. It's the equivalent of going into the stores and seeing like fanny packs and things like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, the fanny pack that they wear around their titty. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yes.
What the fuck is that about?
I have no idea.
Fanny pack already. Now you're wearing it as a titty sling bag?
I have no idea. And did you ever see the school bags that are like the size of a phone? They're like this big.
Well, tiny backpacks have been a big. I mean, that's like the '90s were all about a tiny backpack, like
Listen, no,
littlest backpack, big straps. The backpack's this big.
yeah. Why? You can't put anything in it.
I think that's the point, though, isn't it? Like
I
this
guess
backpack costs $1,000, and you can't put anything in it.
Yeah,
That's that's America right there.
Very true. Very true. So how excited are you that hopefully Donald Trump is not our president anymore?
Oh God, I wish
Not
I
to
could
get into
be
politics,
excited.
but
That's one of those things where like my mom's Catholic and Hispanic. She's from Chile, and I was raised to never. I swear to God, I don't think she's ever said this, but it's like my paraphrase of my mother is, "Don't count your blessings, because then everyone will know how many blessings you have and try to take your blessings." And like Donald Trump, like I want to be like dancing in the street about it, but it's like it ain't over till it's over kind of shit.
I know.
And like he's like the epitome of like when I get mad about like straight people, that's what I'm talking about is the Donald Trumps of the world.
Right.
Like will we ever see him get his comeuppance? Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
if I don't see him get his comeuppance in our lifetime, then I feel like my heaven, a component of my heaven is going to have to include watching Donald Trump suffer somehow, which you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not going to be satisfied until I know that he, like, I don't mean physically, but like, you know, like whatever it is, like bad, like he has a bad day or his hair blows out and we can all see he's bald. Like something like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I guess I have taken like, we're not getting Donald Trump doing that kind of stuff, but we do get Rudy Giuliani. So like his hair melting, and the thing of him farting the other day. So I have enjoyed that. He's been great. He's been giving me that Schadenfreude that I need. You know.
Yeah, it's been great. And the thing that scares me the most about him is that the amount of things that he's gotten away with already.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that he could possibly get away with somehow staying in the White House.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I feel like no one would even really question it. They were just like, okay.
I don't know. I think there'll be civil unrest.
I mean, we would people like us would question it, but it would just go on like a regular thing. I feel like anything that he does that's portrayed in the media is like, that's just Donald Trump.
I just never. I mean, I guess I've always felt like that Republicans are inherently working against the self-interest or the interest of individual Americans. But like now I'm just like, they're fucking evil. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's god awful. What I wonder though is like, okay, let's say everything transitions smoothly. And you know, hope beyond hope. Warnock and Ossoff win those 2 Senate seats. It's still not going to be smooth sailing. Do you know what I mean? Like the Republicans will find some other way, the religious right. And that's what I think is like, it's the special interest groups and big business that controls the Republican Party that is really the root of our problem. But then in the same way, that's the Democratic Party too. You know, they're just more sympathetic to our specific needs. And I don't know.
Right.
I'm
right.
like, can we just try socialism for like a year, see how that goes, before everyone's like, no, you know?
Or even better, can we just try like meeting somewhere in the middle? You know,
Yeah,
like
I
some
don't.
kind of level ground. I don't know.
I don't
It'll
know if
ever
that's
happen.
ever like. It
Ever.
feels like to me that it's like it's. I don't. I'm
So
somebody
extreme.
who like I haven't had a lot of on social media. All the people that I knew growing up that were racist and misogynist and whatever and homophobic, none of them have been my friends for 20 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so a lot of people I know who are like, oh, you know, I had to delete my best friend from high school. Da 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 da. It's like I haven't. I went through that in the 90s when I came out.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And like so now where that occurs mostly is within the gay community for me. So like white gay men or women who think that they are woke, but what they really are is like low-key racist. And yeah, so there's a lot of that still
Yeah.
going on. But it's like the idea that we're ever going to come to the middle, I just don't know. I mean, maybe this next generation will be the ones that do that, but certainly not Gen X. We didn't do it, and millennials definitely didn't do it. They went
Right.
the other way, you know?
Right. And that's the thing too. It's so extreme on both sides.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like
exactly.
no one could no one, those people aren't going to change ever.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I've had queer comics be mad at me for performing at like straight clubs because, you know, that those environments are not safe and healthy for gay people, blah blah blah, which in a way is true and definitely historically has been true, but that's changing. And like without participating in the mainstream comedy scene, you're not doing the same thing that you could. You're totally limited yourself.
Right.
Like you could have a huge gay audience, and I could do that. I could go after an audience. Like there's a lot of queer comics that like whatever they look like is what their audience looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So if they are a lesbian with an asymmetrical haircut, their audience is filled with lesbians with asymmetrical haircut.
Right.
And that's great for them. But for me, it's like I'd much rather talk to a group of people that I have the least amount in common with and make them laugh and then sneak my little ideas. And because I'm not really a platform comic, but you get my platform. You understand everything that I am spiritually, religiously, economically, politically by my comedy. By the end of the show, right. You know exactly who I am. And right. if you don't agree with any of that, you still laughed and listened to me. I got in there. I'm in your head now.
Yeah.
You know, whether you know it or not. I don't know.
Right. And you know what? No, you're right. And that's what comes through in your podcast to me.
Oh, well, thank you.
I think you have that, like, you're accepting of everyone, and you want to have a diverse audience. You want other people to listen to you than just you. You know what I mean?
And I think that's sort of like I grew up with hot-headed. My parents were very like, they're very reactionary people in terms of like, if something upset them, you know, there was no just letting something slide. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that like I'm the opposite of that. I'm like I want things to come from at least some kind of place of calmness, because people deserve that. People like we're so at each other's throats constantly that like even just giving people the littlest amount of breathing room, the amount of kind of like ombudsman, I don't know what to call it. It's like you establish a lot of relatedness really quickly when you let people be who they are. And sometimes that's like really problematic. Like I've definitely had instances where, you know, me giving somebody that space has resulted in them saying and doing things that I'm like, okay, let's rewind. Let's close the room off. Let's get, you know, no more space for you.
Too much. Yeah.
But I feel like that's less and less with me. And you know, honestly, when I first started stand up, I would get like physically sick when I heard a comic be homophobic on stage. Like I would get like it would bother me to my core. If someone said a gay slur in front of me, oh God, I'd be upset about it for weeks. And honestly, I just become desensitized. But I needed to be. I was in a place of where I insulated myself so much inside of my own community that, and we have this sort of like, gay people were really, I guess, I don't know, forgiving. There's a lot of room for us to talk about how we don't like straight people. You know what I'm saying? And the reality is that like, that may be true. And there may be a lot of trauma that came out of the hands of straight people that every gay person has to deal with. But the reality is that like at least 90% of the world is straight. So no matter how much traumatized you are, you're never going to be in a space of not being like, you know, when you hear about terms like safe spaces, that's what we're talking about, where we can go and not have to deal with straight people. And I think that that's one of those things. It's like gay people, queer people in general are more integrated into the regular world. So you see us more, like straight people see us more occurring in the world. And then we're not like, you know, every straight person is an evil, you know what I mean? And I think that that's like a big change to me. Because when I first came out, I was like, I don't want any straight friends. I don't want to deal with straight people. Because I had a lot of people like basically disown me, you know, in terms of, you know, and all those people have now come around. Like, you know, time has shifted and gay's more accepted. And some of those people I'm friends with and some of those people I will never be friends with because the cut was too deep, you know, 20 years ago and stuff. But
absolutely. Well, I think you're a fantastic person and a wonderful comic. And I really appreciate you coming on the show today. I really do.
Oh, well, thank you so much. This was great. This was
great,
awesome.
Man. I really appreciate it. So before we go, is there anything you'd like to add?
Anything
you want to mention? Got something coming up on the horizon that you want to put out there?
No, I would just point out that my podcast is called Straight People, but it's spelled STR, the number 8, straight, space PPL people. Some people get confused about that. And that's sort of it. And then when is this coming out? Do you know?
It'll be out tonight.
Tonight? Oh, well then on 12/22, I'm doing a Zoom comedy show at 8 p.m. Eastern, and it's going to be called a Holiday Comedy Kiki. And I've got performers from all over the country performing, and we're raising money for a great food bank in Atlanta. And you can go to www.comedyian.com and follow the link there to buy tickets. And if you don't want to buy a ticket, then follow the link to donate some money to the food bank that we're doing. So this is like a community food bank. So rather than a food charity, this is like a community fridge for people who are underfed to come and just help themselves. So it's like, it is for homeless people, but it's also for somebody who maybe their hours have been cut back because of COVID and they don't have as much money in their pocket. These are pre-made meals and produce and all kinds of stuff. And there are several locations in Atlanta. And that's just something where it's like, it's not a licensed charity, but it's like, I know people who are eating from that fridge every day. So I want to help continue that cycle and make sure that they have their food and serve Atlanta best I can.
Absolutely. That's really cool. I'm going to definitely be checking that out.
Nice.
And your Twitter handle is at...
you can find me anywhere at Aber Comedian. My last name is Aber, but I am a bear, like a gay person. So like Aber Comedian. And I'm on Insta and TikTok and Twitter and not Snapchat though. Fuck Snapchat. Fuck with that shit.
Who the fuck? Snapchat. I don't even know what it is. I have one more question to ask.
Okay.
On a scale from 1 to hell fucking yeah, how excited were you to be here today?
Hell fucking yeah.
Awesome.
I was nervous. You know what I mean?
Always nervous.
Like, but the beforehand, like of the, you know, and I said that thing where I was so definitely hell fucking yeah. But I said earlier, I was like, God, I didn't know if I'd have enough to talk about. But then I realized halfway through, we're just talking about me, and I could do that forever. So
yeah, and that's honestly what this whole show is about. I'm not here, you know, I throw in my things about me, but for the most part, I celebrate things that I love, like comedy and music and film, and I want to, you know, hear from the person and the artist and keep like art alive and things like that. That's kind of the goal of my show here.
Well, that's awesome.
Is that especially during these times where it's being kind of swept under the rug because of, you know, what's going on.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I'm not single-handedly doing it, but I'd like to make my contribution.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate that.
Of course, Ian, anytime. And, you know, we'll keep in touch and I'm sure we'll be tagging each other and stuff and things like that.
Tag me, bro.
But thank you for your time. And I really appreciate you being here and rock on, man.
Awesome.
Keep fucking making people laugh. You're so funny.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Well, I appreciate that, man. All right, cool.
Of course.
Well, thank you again. And tag me up, bro. I'll promote it however I can.
Will do. Same here.
All right. See you, buddy.
All right, Ian. See you. Thank you.
Bye.